Okay, welcome back everybody to Roll Mangging for the wacky, wild adventures in Call of Cthulhu. Yeah, so the craziness continues. Perhaps even escalates a little bit. Not quite as much as it will maybe next session, but it's getting there. It's getting there. Alright, so we had, well, first, Ed didn't show up once again. Again, without a reason of any sort, communication of any sort. It's not, I guess, a huge deal. Because, well, I mean, I'd replace him if I could. But we're kind of struggling with that because everybody watches Secrets of Rollmate. So, yeah, it's just, what are you going to do? It's a 5-player campaign. But yeah, you know. Okay, so when we last ended off, Richard Blackstone was learning some spells from Dr. Ali Kafur. And the rest of the group was spending some time locating Jan Willem van Hoevelen. And we kind of just skipped over the logistics of that. They were basically doing recon work, I guess you could say. They were asking around a lot. They were looking into, they were asking at embassies or, if anybody knew this guy or where to find him. So you could roleplay all that if you're really boring and you like boring stuff. Or you could just say 2 days later you find out his location. There's just a line of how much do you really want to play out. There was a point here during the session where they stole a wheelchair. And it was either, do we want to role play you guys stealing a wheelchair? Potentially could be funny. Potentially could be interesting. But it's not really, the time is better spent doing more interesting stuff. So just do one roll, you either succeed or you fail, and move on. So that's the essence of DMing, is kind of deciding what should be played out and what shouldn't. Some people will play out everything, even like traveling. I don't know how you do that, but I guess if you're really immersive, you role play all the traveling, every conversation, everything you do. Probably takes forever to do anything. Some people just, God, tangents, right? The Fate core system that I'm looking at, which really intrigues me, the way it's set up is you're supposed to do scenes. So you just go from scene to scene to scene. So you skip out all the boring shit in between. And it's just like, you're in one scene, you're like, you beat some guy down, you interrogate him, and he's like, Jimmy Smits did it, he's at the bar. And so it's like, okay, next scene starts, you arrive at the bar. And it just goes scene to scene to scene. At least I think that's how it's set up. You can obviously do whatever the hell you want, but it's interesting. I mean, they call it scenes and everything, so, yeah, that was a weird little tangent. Anyways, what the hell was I? Oh, yeah, them looking for Jan Willem. Alright, so we started on the morning of the February 28th, 1925, which is a Saturday. Alright. And they decide that, they discuss all their options and what they need to do. And I posted a very nice summary for all of them about what was going on. I think that helped them out. Helps me out, too. And so they decided they want to visit the Bent Pyramid. That's very important. That's where some shit went down with the Carlisle expedition. It's an important spot. But they also want to talk to this Jan Willem guy because he's their link to the Clive expedition. And something's going on with the Clive expedition because they are involved, supposedly, with this mummy that was stolen that might be Nito Chris, who some people are trying to resurrect, which would be bad. So that's an important link. So they decide to go visit Jan Willem first. As they walk out of the hotel, they bump into a portly American man with a large beard, older, and with a raccoon on his shoulder. And he, this is Ziggy's new character, Ted McNugget. He is a technical term would be a hick, a redneck, a southern man, if you will. And he has a pet raccoon named Andrew Jackson. And this is it's the dumbest, most useless character in Call of Cthulhu history. Well, I don't want to say that. In our Call of Cthulhu history. But it's probably the funniest, so... There's no reason for him to really be there. He offers nothing to the party, and he really shouldn't be a part of it, but he is. And Ziggy's inspiration for this character, I don't know what it's called. I can't provide any links or anything like that. There's videos of this guy, and he's a hick dude. He looks like I just described. And there's videos on YouTube of this guy, like, showering with his pet raccoon and, like, dancing with it and shit. And it's hilarious, but it's just like, okay, you know, you see that and you're like, that's a Call of Cthulhu character right there. So, yeah, Ted McNugget. So they bump into this guy, and he quickly realizes that they are Americans. And Ted McNugget's backstory is he won tickets or something. I don't know how, I don't know why, but he won tickets to, like, Nile tours. Like, a tour of the Nile and things along it. And he's supposed to be checking out the pyramid. So he's got this whole paid tour thing. So he mistakes these people for the tour guides. And Richard Blackstone, of course, because we need to get this guy involved, he's like, yes, that is correct. We're the tour guides. Before we hit up the pyramids, we're gonna be taking a little detour into the old city. It's like, oh yeah, you know. It was hilarious. Ted McNugget, just funny. Okay, so they all go, and I think. Oh yeah. So they need to get to this place in the old city. None of them know how to get there except Gulk. And so they're like, well, let's ask Reggie. Good old Reggie, he'll guide you there. So they talk to Reggie, and he's like, yes, I will take you there. And so I do a roll for Reggie to see if he makes it there. And I roll a 3. And they're all just like, man, this guy, I think they called him mentally retarded at one point. They were shit-talking all over him. So I'm glad I rolled that 3, because he's like, here it is. A moment of clarity from Reggie. And so they arrive at this Street of the Moths. And they don't know where. All they know is he's on the Street of Moths. They don't know exactly where. And so they ask this beggar. And so he's like, do you know where a Dutchman is? Or anything like that? And I do a roll to see if the beggar knows. And he had a pretty good chance of knowing. But he failed. So he's just like... And Richard's like, he does some like persuade shit, and he's like, it would be in your best interest to help us out, blah, 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 blah. And he succeeds pretty well on his persuade, so the guy's just like, I lied. I don't know where he is. Okay, so they ask her, they like look around, and there's only a couple shops on, this is like the dingiest street in the whole thing, so there's only a couple shops there. They go up to the tailor shop, and the door flies open. The owner comes out shooing away some cats with a broom and cursing in Arabic. And so they start talking to this guy, and they ask about an archaeologist, and he's like, the Dutchman. Yeah, he hasn't paid rent in weeks. I'm sick of the bastard. He's back there. And so they go back, and they talk to Jan Willem. And I talked about this in Secrets Roaming, but I can say it here. My inspiration for playing this character was John Candy, through and through. I don't think I did a great impression, but that was the idea I wanted to try and convey. I should have just said John Candy, but so he's like, yeah, I'm Jan Willem. My friends call me Jan. I'm trying to get Yanni to catch on, but it hasn't had much luck. And so they start talking about this guy, talking to this guy, and he says how he was. He gives what info he can about the Clive expedition. I don't like. So many people know. I trying to remember off the top of my head what a character knows and what a character says, because they're not always the same, and it's always different between different characters, and it's just like so I'm trying to remember what Jan Willem says. Okay, he says that they found a mummy, they couldn't identify it. He thinks that it's Needle Chris, but he doesn't really know what that means. And he says that they found some scrolls in there that were very legible, which contradicts what they've already heard about the scrolls. And that he was fired for incompetence and alcoholism and stuff like that. And he says that he might be able to get them into the excavation site. He still has maybe a friend there. And so they start plying him with a little bit of alcohol, which he enjoys. And so he tells Richard that about these scrolls that he found that are going to make him rich and famous. He found them in a temple in Cairo, a hidden temple, and he's translating them. And while they're talking to him, a cat like jumps into the room through the window, and he throws like a spoon at it, and it jumps out, and he continues talking. And yeah, so he says it's just going to take him a few more days to finish translating, but he doesn't want to show them the scrolls or anything like that. And he mentions that the scrolls talk about the goddess Bast, who is the cat goddess. And he does not quite put together this whole cat problem with the cat goddess. Okay. The players figure this out pretty damn quickly, as I'm sure every player who has ever played this campaign has. Okay, so that was pretty much it. He said that he would arrange the meeting and he would get back to them at their hotel, and that would be good. Okay. So they pretty much all leave then. I don't think anything else I don't know, not in my notes at least. Okay, so they decide, all right, let's go to the Bent Pyramid. So they drive down there in a couple of cars, and they go over to the Bent Pyramid. Now, at Dashur, there are basically 2.5 pyramids-ish. There's the Bent Pyramid, there's the Red Pyramid, and there's the Collapsed Pyramid. So they're most interested in the Bent Pyramid. So they walk over to it from the western side. So they see like an entrance that's been boarded up. And they see on the northern side there's a couple of guards standing by an entrance. So Ted McNugget, I think, suggests that they take the real tour, what he paid for, and they go this way through the barricade. And so he goes over to it and he moves some loose boards around, and they go in. Alright. So they go into this like funerary chamber, and they look around, and there's 2 like abnormally thick pillars. So Roland goes over to one, investigates, and finds that it opens up. One of the pillars opens up, so he opens it up, and there's a spiral staircase leading up. It's like it's so convenient. So they go up, and they go up, and they go up, and they go up, and they go up, all the way 300 some feet to the interior of the capstone of the pyramid. And there they find a chamber. And in the chamber is a throne carved from black obsidian, encrusted with gems. They find 6 small pedestals, each topped with a small collection of gems. They find basically a map of the world on the wall. They find star charts on the wall, and they find like a large inscription in an unknown language on the wall. All right. So Richard Blackstone hits up the map of the world, and it's not entirely accurate. It's old. I mean, this map is a few thousand years old. But just the fact that it's a map of the world, from 2600 BC is pretty crazy in itself, inside a pyramid. And there are 3 rubies, placed on the map that form a triangle. One of the rubies is placed in the East China Sea, or, it's not like it's labeled, but where the East China Sea generally is. You wouldn't be able to figure out a precise location from this. East China Sea, one is in what appears to be the Kenya region of Africa, and one would be in Western Australia. And there's an ebony band that runs across the map. And so with a successful idea roll, which is basically me just kind of handing this to you, Richard Blackstone figured that this band coincided with the arc of totality for the upcoming solar eclipse that was to occur on January 14th, 1926. Now, I did not reveal it there, and they did not figure it out, or at least I don't think they did. But if they had notes as good as mine, they might remember that the campaign started on January 15th, 1925. Coincidence? Probably not, but okay. Alright, it was around this time that Roland went over to inspect the throne. And he touched it, and he noticed this is pure black obsidian. And he sits on the throne. And Ted also goes over there, and he sees this is, covered in gems, looks very nice. So he pulls out a chisel. And he just wants to take off a little piece. So he brings it down onto the throne. And I just start laughing. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys just hand this to me. That I get to be just a sadistic bastard. Okay. So as soon as he hit it, he got rocketed backwards with this blast of energy. He just took some damage as he smashed into the wall. And all the gems on top of the little pillars, or little pedestals, immediately burst into flame, lighting up the whole room. And they're just like... And Roland, on the throne, his eyes go into the back of his head. And he begins speaking. But not in his normal voice. And he says, you who would enter my inner sanctum, you who would desecrate my throne, what are you doing here? And he introduces himself as the Black Pharaoh. And it's kind of a one-sided conversation. Well, not really. Richard Blackstone's eventually said, the Carlisle expedition, Roger Carlisle, Hypatia Masters, Aubrey Penhew, the others, what did you do with them? And he starts laughing. He's like, look and see. And he waves his hand across, and everybody... Ronnie stayed outside. He stayed outside of the whole pyramid for this whole thing because of out-of-game reasons. So he's not there. So everybody except Roland had to roll sanity for what they just saw. And what they saw was an expedition site in basically a camp in Kenya. And they saw a bunch of workers going to and fro, and they saw all the members of the Carlisle expedition. So they saw Roger Carlisle, they saw Hypatia, Penhew, Huston, Jack Brady, and I think that's it. Pretty sure. And then they saw horrible, horrible shit. They saw horrors descend from the sky. They saw ghouls rising out of the earth, formless spawn, just terribleness, just shredding people apart. Horrific. Horrific shit. Everybody just got leveled, including the Carlisle expedition. You know, the principal people. So they had to roll sanity. They all succeeded. Blew my mind. So some of it was not... I think the highest was 8 that they lost. So Eugene lost 8. He succeeded on his idea. And so he lost his psychosomatic loss of his legs. So he just immediately goes to the floor. Why that? Because it's random. I didn't feel like I couldn't think of a specific one in the moment. I could say fear of Kenya, but that's just like, alright, it's just kind of like screwing the character. He wouldn't survive that long for it to matter anyways, so yeah. Okay. It was a 1d10/1d100. So I was like, man, that seems severe. But then they all succeeded, and I was like, damn. Okay, so they all just saw all these people get shredded apart, including the Carlisle expedition. And he said, I think he taunted them. He was like, you know, this is futile, give it up. All your dreams are doomed, or, you know, he said some dark shit like that. And, Ted McNugget, fucking Ted McNugget, he's lying there against the wall, probably bleeding out of the back of his head. And he's just kind of like nodding his head along with this. And he's like, hey, Mr. Pharaoh, I got a question. How did you make all these pyramids? It fascinates me. And I'm just like, oh my god. And he's like, Mr. McNugget, would you like to see? He's like, yeah, I'd like to see that. So he waves his hand again. And the map on the wall of the world starts shimmering. And it disappears. And it's replaced by an archway that opens up into basically like a marketplace. It appears to be like a marketplace of ancient Egypt, as far as, you know, they could tell. And he's like, take a step through, Mr. McNugget. He's like, all right, come on, Andrew Jackson, let's check it out. So he steps through, and he feels the sun on his forehead. He smells the marketplace. You know, he hears all these sounds. And then he hears laughter from behind him, from the Black Pharaoh. And he sees the archway begin to shimmer. He's like, oh shit! And I'm like, alright, you have one jump roll to live. So he rolls his jump. I think he had like 50 in it. I think he did. He failed. Goodbye, Mr. Ted McNugget. You were a good guy. And so Gulk, however, snapped his fingers a couple times, and Andrew Jackson, the raccoon, jumped off of his arms through the shimmering archways that closed and landed into Gulk's hand. So Andrew Jackson survived, but not pleasant things probably happened to Mr. Ted McNugget. And so the Black Pharaoh is just like, abandon your quest. It is folly. And he laughed again, and his laughter faded away. And Roland's head slumped down. And so Roland's like, he's like, man, his player was like, I probably don't remember any of that. And I'm like, no, you don't, because you're dead. Because that's the price you pay for your insolence. I didn't make that up, all right? That's in the book. If they sit in the throne, that's it's like all that's left is the twitching corpse of the, the blasphemer or whatever it is. I didn't make it up. It's funny to me, but I can't take credit. So they stick around. They don't immediately run out at that point. Richard checks out the star charts, of which he can't make heads or tails of. And then he checks out the big inscription. And he can't read it, but he takes a pencil rubbing of it for somebody else to translate. And then he's like, all right, let's get out of here. So him and Golk drag Eugene out of there. They meet back up with Ronnie, and they're just like, let's fucking go. And he's like, where are the others? He's like, let's go. No questions. And so they drive away. Yeah. So, yeah, that was two characters dead within probably an hour, 45 minutes, maybe. I think Ted McNugget probably has the quickest death so far. I mean, he didn't technically die on the spot, but as far as from entering play to leaving play, I think he's got the trophy so far. It'd be tough to beat that. I mean, unless you make a character and he appears and he's just like, F you, Nyarlathotep, and I hate you. Maybe that could get you killed quicker. Or maybe not. Maybe that would just be he'd give you cancer that would last for 60 years. Don't play games, man. Don't play games. Alright, so I think, yeah, that was pretty much the rest of the night then. Nothing else happened because the other two had to work on their characters and we had a dinner break and stuff like that. Okay, so the morning comes. And I don't have marked here where the two characters entered, so I'll just describe the two new characters. One of them, Roland's new character, is named Lu Jiang. Very, very stereotypical Chinese martial arts guru, elderly, probably like 147 years old, but he could take out an entire room full of people. Very stereotypical character. That's fine, because it's funny because it's called Cthulhu. If it were D&D, it would not be so funny. Why he's there in Cairo? Who cares, man? Who cares at this point? Ziggy's new character is named Linus Buttons. Okay, this was kind of bugging us. So maybe somebody watching this remembers. We had another character named Linus. We don't remember where. I don't even know if it was Call of Cthulhu or not, but I remember somebody had, it was not me. Somebody had a character named Linus. I swear. And Ziggy said you knew somebody had it. So if anybody remembers another Linus we had, I'd appreciate it. Because it's bugging me. And he is basically modeled after the pilot from the Mummy movie with Brendan Fraser. He's basically an older British guy living in Cairo, and he just wants adventure, and he's just a leftover from the war, and he's got a plane. Pretty simple. I think I described Reggie as like I wanted him to be like that character. So now we actually have one of those characters. So that was pretty simple too. He's just hanging out in Cairo at the bar, and they're like, you look like you want some adventure. He's like, yes, I want some adventure. We have some adventure. I will join your adventure. Done. Okay. So in the morning paper, Ronnie, he's like, oh, there was an argument. I didn't talk about this. There was an argument the day prior where they were talking about the girdle of Nitocris at the Mosque of Ibn Tulun. Ronnie was pretty adamant that they go there to take it, to put it in their own protection. Or, no, actually, he wanted to destroy it. Because he's like, if it's destroyed, they can't do anything with it. Because it's necessary to resurrect Nitocris. Richard Blackstone was against this idea. Because, hey, that belongs in a museum. So they decided against it. Because this guy says he's got it protected. He's got to protect. So he gets the paper this morning, and he's like, I'm going to look for anything interesting, you know. And I'm like, you might find something. And he's like, I have a sneaking suspicion I know what it is. And if it is, I'm going to rub it in Richard's face. And so I'm like leafing through the book, and I'm like, yes. Tragedy at Mosque of Ibn Tulun. It's like, fuck! This character yelled that out. This player yelled that out, everything. It was funny. And so basically the news article was very sparse. And it said that there was like a cave-in, or there was like a collapsed ceiling at a building adjacent to the Mosque of Ibn Tulun. Part of the mosque. Like, it wasn't just like some random building set up there. It was like a study room of the mosque. And 6 scholars died. One of the men is missing, and Ahmed Zahavi is in shock at the hospital. And so Richard paid a visit to Ahmed, but he's catatonic, so there was nothing going on there. And so they're like, well, you know, that's it, man. Now we're in trouble. So they talk to Kafur, and he's like, you know, they have probably all they need now to resurrect Nitocris, so you need to find where this is going to occur. So, the mummy was stolen from the Giza pyramid, so rumor has it there are some labyrinths running beneath there. You know, perhaps something there, perhaps answers from the Clive expedition, something. Get to work! And they also have to deal now with Eugene, who is basically crippled. I know it was temporary psychosomatic, and I'll take that away once they're either like out of danger and they're going to another like country, or he dies. Like in his last moments of death, he'll feel his like toes wiggle or something. I don't know. So they stole a wheelchair, as I mentioned before. Yes, they could have bought one, but Ronnie wanted to steal it. All right. So they go to the Clive expedition, which, they met with Jan Willem. He met them at the hotel. And they see him, like, as he's coming in, he, like, kicks away a cat that's following him. And Richard's like, what is with these fucking cats? And he tells them that he set up a meeting, or he allowed them entrance. His friend there, James Gardner, was like, okay. And the place is real secure. And so, you know, I told them you were just archaeologists looking to check around. So they go down there, and they're greeted at the entrance by a man named Martin Winfield. And they all knew immediately, instinctively, as soon as they met him, that they freaking hate him. And I played that up completely. Just a smug asshole. And he's like, what's your name? Richard Blackstone. What a shit name. And Richard's just like, it was funny. And so they get in, but he's like, I'm watching you. You know, do that thing. That pisses people off, I think. And so they look around the place, and there's nothing really there. I basically told them that. I was like, there's nothing really here of note. It's just ruins that they're excavating. You're not even sure why they are. And there's 2 ways to play that. You either say that there's nothing here, Or you can go the longer route and kind of play up that maybe there is something here. Maybe there is, like... Am I getting lazy? Is that what it is? Like, with the earlier me, would I have played this up a lot? Then there's maybe some secrets here. Like, there's nothing there. The campaign doesn't talk about, playing it up as anything there. So, I think, like, even if I just stick to the campaign as is, which I'm not, even if I stuck it as is, this is a long-ass campaign. So if I start playing out these things a lot, if I lead them astray, you don't want to lead players astray in this. It's rough. So this is a long enough campaign, so there's nothing there. So they meet with Dr. Clive, who seems like a nice older gentleman, and he tells them story of what happened, how they discovered the mummy, how the scrolls were illegible that they found, and Richard's like, well, wait, my buddy Jan Willems said that they were legible. And as soon as he said it, he was like, but he was probably drunk. And Dr. Clive's like, I shouldn't have to say my opinion of Mr. Van Hoevelen. A shitty source. And so, he tells them that it was stolen, that this is, a huge discredit to their expedition, and he doesn't think it's going to last much longer at this rate. And so it was pretty terrible. And Richard asks him if, he says the mummy was unidentified. There was no markings or anything like that, but it must have been a great leader. And Richard's like, do you think, is there a possibility that it was Nitocris? And Dr. Clive's like, highly unlikely, I'm afraid. Well, there is a certain possibility to it. I am a scientist, and as such I have to make deductions, or he said something like that. There was not enough evidence to believe that it was Nitocris. And so that was pretty much it. He told them to, wander the area, to examine, speak with the other members of the expedition, blah, blah, blah. And so there were 3 other people to talk to, because they're not going to talk to Martin Winfield again. So there was James Gardner, Johannes Spreck, and Agatha Broadmoor. So Richard and Eugene go check out James Gardner, and they figure out pretty quickly, he's got a theory, this James guy has a theory that there is a labyrinth underneath the Sphinx. And so they find out pretty quickly that he's being watched by the guards, and he does not want to speak in front of them. So Richard catches on to this, and he's like, is there a way we could speak privately? And James is like, I'll try to arrange something. So that was pretty much it. The other group went to visit Agatha, who is a medium. She can speak with the spirits of the dead. So Lu Jiang made a big point. He kept on insisting that she try and contact the spirits around them and ask them questions. And I tried as subtly as I could to be like, yeah, there's no spirits around here. She's not going to ask them any questions. Move on. Okay, so she also said she had some information, but she was also being watched by guards. She didn't want to talk in front of them. So Ronnie took that as a challenge. So he goes over to the guards, and he starts like holding his crotch and dancing as if he has to go to the bathroom. And they just like point off into the desert, go shit in a hole or something. So he walks like 5 feet in the direction, and then he starts pissing. So one of the guards goes up to him and just shoves him from behind. Ronnie spins around and pisses all over the guy's pants. Dude throws his rifle right at his face, butt of his rifle. Ronnie dodges. And they're swearing in Arabic, and he's just like, whoa, whoa, and he backs up, and they keep pointing, out, just get out, get out. So he backs up like all the way out of the excavation site. It served as a distraction. So they got some more information from Agatha. Basically, she insisted on coming on her own because she is there because she believes that Nitocris is going to be resurrected, and she wants to exorcise the spirit, to banish it forever. That's why she came. and she believes that Dr. Clive has been overly discreet in identifying the mummy, and she thinks that the sarcophagus was not moved by man-made man hands or anything like that. Man hands. It was moved by a supernatural entity or something like that. So yeah, dark shit. They also visited Johannes Spreck, who was a very physically active German guy. He was an occultist. He didn't know anything. Yeah, waste of time. They can't all be good leads. So they met up with, they saw James Gardner go into the ruins. So they all like kind of split up in there. And so Eugene ended up talking to him. I don't think he had a great deal more information, but he mentioned the Sphinx specifically at Giza. He's like, I think there's something under there. Yeah, there wasn't. Yeah, just shit. There's shit under Giza. Check it out. That was basically it. All right, so blah 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 blah. Okay, so they pretty much leave and drive over to Giza. This was somewhat complicated for me to run. I'll talk about this more in Secrets of Role-Mangging, but this wasn't my favorite section of this session, but it worked out, I guess. Basically, they were kind of looking around the pyramids at Giza. There's 3 pyramids and the Sphinx. They're all kind of pretty close together. And so the smallest pyramid, Mensara's, I think it was Menkara's or something like that. That was the one where the mummy was stolen from. So they're like, let's go check that out. And I mentioned the 3 pyramids. I named them, and I'm like, the largest is called the Great Pyramid. And so Richard rolls like a history or something on the Great Pyramid to see if there's any like myths about it that he previously just blew off, but maybe now he might give some credence to. And I'm just looking at my book, and I'm like, he rolled well, and I'm like, no, like, that was the worst. When it goes off script and you're not sure what to say. I guess I could have come up. Man, I'm not as good of a DM as I wish I was. Could have come up with something that just tied it in perfectly, but no, I was like, nah, no. But to compensate, because I kind of left out the detail before, but I'll mention it now. There are some ruins, like some small patch of ruins to the southeast of the Menkara prison, or pyramid. And it was funny, like I had to say it right there. I was like, the fact that I just mentioned it is just like, okay, I wonder if there's something there. But I have to mention it because it's there, I can't just omit details from your environment. That's terrible DMing. I should have said it right away. I should have been, there's 3 pyramids, there's a Sphinx, and there's a small patch of ruins. That's not as obvious then as me mentioning it and now I'll be like, hey, there's a small patch of ruins there. So of course they go check it out immediately. Their characters wouldn't have. But their players were like, yeah, that's where it is. So they go over there, they look around, and Richard ends up finding a, does anybody else ever get, this is bugging me. I get this all the time. I don't know what causes it. You guys could tell me. It's right at, like, the base of my fingernails. There's, like, a little, like, it gets, like, a little cut. Not even a cut. Like, the skin starts going. It's not as bad as I guess I'm making it sound. But it's just kind of frustrating. Like, there's a little flap of skin there, and it kind of hurts a little bit. But it's always just right at the base of the fingernails. I don't know what it is. It pisses me off so much. That's why I wrap my fingers in tape. Anyways, I probably have some horrible disease or something. I don't know. Okay, so they go to the thing. Richard discovers, like, this big stone slab on the ground. And I'm like, yeah, this thing looks like it's been moved recently. There's probably a secret passage underneath. I didn't say that, but I think I implied it strongly enough. So he's like, hey guys, let's move this. So 3 people end up volunteering. I think it was not Eugene. It was Richard, Linus, and Ronnie. Their strengths were 10, 8, and 7. They are pathetic. It would be possible for 3 people to move this thing, but not those 3 people. So they're all just like, ugh. I didn't even roll for them. It was an auto fail. Ugh. They're like, ugh. And then they hear, hey, what the hell is going on here? Like, oh shit. And so they see 3 guards come in. Probably British. Just so they spoke English for this exchange. And they all had revolvers. And Linus just immediately starts saying, oh, I hurt my back and I was stretching it out. And I'm like, roll a fast talk. He rolls like an 80 something. He doesn't have any points in it. So he just gets, shut up! What the hell's going on here? And so Richard starts saying he's an archaeologist. He's here, from Berkeley University, blah, blah, blah. And the guy's like, let's see your permit. And he's just like, I left it in my other coat. You're coming with me. And so Eugene starts, like, rolling away. Like, he starts wheeling himself away. And a guard stops him. And, oh my god, I don't even remember what he said. This pisses me off. He said something. He provoked him somehow, I swear. God damn it. I can't remember. He provoked him somehow, alright? He said something Eugene-ish. And so the guard responded by smashing his face in with the butt of a rifle. Because I wanted that to happen to somebody this session, damn it. So, boom! Immediately knocked out, 5 damage, broken nose, just... And nobody else gave a shit. They were just like... And so... CoC's like... So he sees that they're all about to go with. This was... Come to think of it, I don't think this is me as the DM talking as CoC. Because obviously I don't want them to go to prison. That's boring shit. But I don't think I was talking as CoC to try to get them to just shoot it. I think... somebody was talking about... Yeah, I think it was Ziggy talking about how if this were Reginald, he would, make some quick evil pact to deal with it. And so I was like, well, CoC's there, so... He's like, Richard, are you gonna go along with this? And so Richard rolls like this is how he deals with tough situations. He rolls a 1d2 to figure out, like he flips a coin to see what he's going to do. And while he's doing that, CoC takes like a 45 pistol out of his pants and puts it in Linus's hands behind his back. Here you go. And so, of course, Richard decided to go guns blazing. So he's like, we're too close now! And he didn't get the shot off, but he's like, we're too close now. So we did initiative. Really, he should have got the first shot off, but we went to initiative. Linus got the first shot off. So I want you to picture this. This is a guy, he's like a 67-year-old pilot, and he's just here for adventure. He owns a rifle, but it's not on him. So he's got like his hands behind his back, because he's ready to like go with it. He was ready to go with him. Suddenly he feels the weight of a pistol in his hand. And so he's like, And then he sees Richard, like, we're too close now. And he sees Richard grab his revolver. So he's just like, instant headshot to one of the guys. It was so badass. Okay, so I don't think any of them got shot once. The guards there rolled terribly. But Lu Jiang came in and I don't think he did anything. No, he didn't do anything. He tried, but he didn't do anything. Ronnie pulled out the shotty. I don't know where he was even holding this, but he had a shotty. So he blew off some dude's leg. And Richard finally got a shot off he shot some guy in the chest, which then Linus was just like, blew that guy's head off. It was amazing. Linus was the greatest. He's like, Golk must have blessed this gun. And so then Ronnie finished off the last guy who was down with another shotgun blast. And they're like, oh shit. And they still wanted to hook I'm like, you hear distant shouts. They're like, oh shit, let's get this rope around this slab and pull it off. I'm like, no. And Golk's like, no, let's come back later. They're like, yes. So they all like go to the Jeep, which is parked right nearby. And then I'm like, what did you do with Eugene? So they all rush back in. Ronnie and Richard try to pick up Eugene to carry him over. And so it was like an 18 strength versus 13 size. And so I'm like, all right, I'll roll on the resistance table. You have like a 75% chance. I roll 100. So they basically just like, and he just falls over in his wheelchair, and they're like, oh, fuck. So they get everybody to help. So they all carry him over to the Jeep, and they just throw him in, and they drive off. As the guards, some more guards just are running up from behind them, just, ah! And Linus is just like, I'm going to take some more pot shots. He's oh, God. See, it's funny, right? It's pulpy. Like, it may not be realistic, and it may not be what you really should do. Like, maybe they should be tracked down now and go to prison or something like that. But that's boring. This is fun. That's the difference. So, yes, they will get away. They will not have trouble with the legal things. Now, again, like I've said in the past, if they keep doing it, yes, eventually they will have trouble, because otherwise you all act like psychopaths and you shoot everybody. But for this little bit, it was funny. It worked. We'll go with it. I liked it. It was fun. All right, so they drive off, and they're like, we'll come back at night. Once that place is quiet down, and we'll get that slab off, we'll go down there. All right. So they go back to town, and they're like, all right, let's hang out at a bar until, late at night. So they're hanging out at a bar. Richard's sitting there. He looks out the window. He sees a few cats sitting on the windowsill. He's like, fucking cat, what is this? Is that guy around? And they're like, is Jan around here? And I'm like, nope. And this is just some random bar they went to in town. And they're like, what is going on here? And Richard's like, I'm pissed off at this. So they go, I'm going to go find that Jan guy. So they go back to the Street of Moss. And I think they get lost. Because Richard's like, I'm gonna go right there. And I'm like, all right, roll and navigate. He rolls like a 97, so he crit fails. And I'm like, all right, as you're wandering around the old city, you see more and more cats gathering on rooftops, looking down at you. And he's just like, these fucking cats, man. And so he's completely lost. And eventually he's like, I'm lost, guys. And so they're arguing about what to do. And then Eugene's like, no, I think it was Ron. It might have been Ronnie. It was one of the two. He's like, Golk, do you know where it is? And Golk's like, yeah, I'm sure. And so Richard posts in the Roll20 chat, he's like, I have a feeling like every time Golk gets us out of one of these, every time he unfucks us up, Mang keeps like a counter. And when he gets to 100 unfuck-ups, then that's when bad shit happens. And I laugh, because I'm like, you called me out on my scheme. And then Ren's like, yeah, but we know it's much less than 100. Okay. So he leads them right there. And they go back in. And they start talking. Richard starts talking with Jan. Getting increasingly aggravated. And eventually, like, Jan says that these scrolls are going to make him rich and famous. He keeps repeating that because that's all he wants. He's been here for like 5 years. This is what he wants. He's finally found his fortune and glory. Fortune and glory, kid. And so Richard eventually just gets too pissed off at this guy. And he just lets out this tirade of just how you're a worthless piece of shit. You're never going to be anything. You're a discredit to Egyptology. You're terrible. Just give us the scrolls. And so I likened this was perfect, actually, because I likened this to exactly that point in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles where Steve Martin finally snaps at John Candy, and it's like the saddest thing in the world. That's exactly what it was like in that room. It was perfect. Can't plan that shit. Okay, and so it's just like, you can go. I'm not giving you the scrolls. And he's like, got tears in his eyes and shit. And Linus is like, hey, I'll stay here and drink with you. You know, they can go. And he looks at Richard, and Richard's like, fine. So they all step outside of the house. They don't leave. They're just kind of like, Richard's like pacing in front of this house, which now the entire roof is covered in cats. He's just like, fucking cats, man. So funny. And so Linus sits there and drinks with the guy. I don't think they even drink because they didn't have any alcohol. He's just kind of sitting there and talking. And the conversation starts pretty pleasantly. Until finally Linus gets very dark. And he's like, you know, cats could scratch you. But I could put a bullet in your brain. And I'm like, holy shit. It's like, why are you doing this? And so he pulls out a gun. And Jan stood resolute. And so he's like, fuck this. So he leaves. And they're like, we're not getting anything out of this. Cats are just everywhere. And so Richard's like, alright, I'm going to go to the library and I'm going to research this Bast person because I'm going to figure out a way to contact her. And the others were all going to go back to the hotel, but they're like, no, we'll help you. They're sick of this cat problem too. So they all start heading to the library. Shortly after they leave, they turn a corner in the alley. And they're face to face with a large black panther. And almost all of them lose 3 sanity. And as soon as they see it, almost all of them just turn and be like, nope. No, fuck this. And they march right back to Jan's place. Linus was like kind of frozen still in shock. He's just like, whoa. Eugene was being carried by Gulk because it was funny. Because he's so short. So Gulk walks right up to this panther and just starts petting it. And the panther, like, does not really like it, but he's not like hitting, you know, he's not like growling or biting or anything like that. He's just, I'm a panther. Kind of like that. And so Gulk's just like, I hate cats. And he leaves. Those subtle clues, baby. And so Linus is like, So Richard just marches right back to Jan's place, like kicks in the door. His whole room is filled with cats at this point, just everywhere. And so Richard just pulls out his revolver and just puts it right to his head. He's like, give me those scrolls or I swear to God. He's like, all right. So he digs up a hole underneath his cot and pulls out the scrolls. And Richard just grabs them. And he's like, where did you find these? And so Jan gives him verbal directions to get there. But I'm like, it sounds pretty complicated. And so he's like, you're guiding us there. And so he leads him out of the house with just bullet, gun to his head. I'm like, oh my God, what is this? It's hilarious, man. And the owner is like shouting at him in Arabic, what is this? What is going on? He doesn't say anything. And so Jan Willem starts leading him there. And the campaign book says that if Jan Willem is leading you, all it takes is a luck roll from a random player. And I'm like, yeah, I could make it random, but no, this is too much Richard right now. It has to be Richard. So Richard rolls, fails. And so Jan Willem just like, he goes most of the way, and then he just stops and he's like, I don't remember. And so he cocks the hammer and he's like, you better start remembering right now. And I'm like, oh my God. And so I roll one more time for Jan Willem, and he fails. And he's just like, I don't know. He's like, and so he tries to find it based on the verbal directions. And I'm like, all right, roll power times 1, which is a minuscule chance of succeeding. So he doesn't find it. And so Ronnie goes up to a cat, because there's plenty of cats around. He goes up to a cat, and he starts shouting at the cat. He's like, we're trying to lead this fat asshole to return your scrolls. Just somebody give us a sign of where this place is. And so the cat just kind of looks at him, cocks his head, and then just starts walking. And he's like, well, we don't know where the hell we are, so let's follow it. So I'm like, all right, Ronnie, roll a power times 2. Again, this is all in the book. He fails. And so they're just like, God damn it! So Eugene says, hey, Gulk, do you know where this place is? Now, this is kind of a big one, because if he doesn't know, they're pretty fucked. If he does know, that relieves them from a lot of fucked. So, there's a price to pay here. So I'm like, alright, Eugene, you lose 2 power permanently. Which, in the long run, he's probably not going to last that long anyways. So, it's not a huge deal, but it kind of sucks now. But, again, this is kind of like just a side quest, so the fact that they kind of solve it is not a huge deal either. So, it kind of worked out. And so, but it was like, Eugene asked his questions, and then he suddenly just feels himself just kind of feel strange, but then Gulk's like, yeah, I think I do. And he leads them right to it. And so they go down into this kind of underground temple. Very hidden. Very hidden. And it's basically like an underground dome. Just filled with cats. Again, cats everywhere. I like cats. Lovecraft liked cats, so cats everywhere. And there was a little pathway through the cats to get to the far end, where there was a big statue of a cat-headed goddess. So Richard goes over there, he finds a little drawer at the bottom, he opens it up, and he puts the scrolls in. And he kicks the drawer shut, and he hears a bunch of hisses. He's like, fucking cats. And so this elderly man comes down, out of nowhere, and he says that he's here to pray for his lost cat. And so Richard's like, come, pray with me, pray with me. And so, just anything, desperate. So the man starts praying, and Richard just repeats right after him. And as he's doing so, a bunch of the cats come up and rub against him. And purr. And he's like, oh, thank God. They have relieved the issue of the cats. For now. And so Yeah, that was pretty much it. And as they're leaving, Gulk's like, I hate cats. And he, like, kicks one of them. And it does not hiss. And Linus makes note of this. And, yeah. So they went back to the hotel where they're going to wait a few more hours. And that's where we ended. So, yeah. Kind of a very exciting start. And then the rest was interesting, but not very dangerous. There are situations, definitely, where the cats get progressively more violent. They weren't that violent. They would get to that point. And you don't want to be facing down 6 supernatural lions, alright? Because, you know, if they piss her off enough, she'll send panthers, she'll send tigers, she'll send lions, but then she'll start souping them up. And when you fight a lion the size of, like, a rhino, good luck. So yeah, that could have been dangerous, but I don't think most campaigns get to that point. I think most players realize pretty quickly that this is bad. This guy's a dumbass. Let's fix it. So yeah, there was that. We haven't had really combat. I mean, we do not have much combat in this game, so them killing 3 guards like that was kind of rare. But their meeting with the Black Pharaoh was a big deal. And, oh, right. God, I left out. I did not write that down. That really upsets me. That was a big deal. At one point, they talk to Kafur. Richard talks to Kafur. And he shows them the rubber, or the pencil rubbing that he had of the inscription in the sanctum. And Kafur reads it, and he's like, yes. This appears to discuss the impending birth of a child of Nyarlathotep at the Mountain of the Black Wind. The date is... Did you rub this right? And he's like, yeah. Huh. It says the date is March 31st, 1925. Like, oh shit, that's in a month. Like, you better figure this shit out. So yes, we have 2 deadlines now. Very interesting. One of them they very easily understand is bad. The impending birth of the child of Nyarlathotep. Probably not a good thing. That's in a month. The other date, January 14th, 1926. Much, much farther away. They have no idea what it really means, though. So, they have time to figure that one out. The other one, they don't have much time to figure it out. So, yeah, that was that kind of fun session. I'm sad Ted McNugget died. He was funny. I wanted him to stick around and do a lot more, but he came in at a very dangerous time, man. You introduce yourself, and then you go visit the inner sanctum of Nyarlathotep. It's like, yeah, okay. So yeah, next session, I'm pretty certain they're going to get to the underneath Giza, because there's definitely some stuff underneath Giza. And, yeah. Yeah. Oh, God. Alright, so I think that pretty much wraps it up. We are not even halfway through this campaign. So that's pretty crazy. Well, I guess it gets kind of fuzzy later on, but yeah, alright. So, my name is Mang. This has been Roll Manging for Call of Cthulhu. I'll see you fine folks in 2 weeks.